Welcome back to another video here with your boy, the OG Frenchie. Today we are talking about the Grizzly 2x42 knife grinder. It has been exactly 1 year since I purchased this machine, and I thought I'd do a quick video kind of going over what it's been like running one of these for the last year. Now, when these first came out, I think the whole knife making community and people starting to get into the hobby were very excited, much like myself. Prior to this machine, I was making knives on a Harbor Freight 1x30, as a lot of weekend warriors probably were. And that's something to note too, is I am what I consider a weekend hobby knife maker. I don't make knives and sell knives for a profession, and it's not something that I am running constantly. So that's good to note. I think that the biggest issue with this grinder, mine as well, and lots of people's out there that got these, was the motor. We had lots of reports of people burning out the motor within the first week of owning it. I will say that for the first month or so, I did not run into that problem. I was running this machine at medium to high speed for several hours at a time and had no problems. The motor, I didn't even pay attention to it, but I know it wasn't getting hot or maybe a little warm, but not overheating. About 2 to 3 months into running this on the weekends, and some knives I'd be grinding on for a while, an hour maybe, 2 tops. I noticed after about 2 or 3 months, the motor starting to get warm. And it's something that I was constantly paying attention to after I had heard people's motors were burning up and stuff. So as I'm using it, I'm checking on it and making sure that it's not overheating. I will say after owning it for 1 year, I have not replaced the motor. This is the original motor, and it is still working. And it still performs. I just have to be careful about the time that I'm using it. I will use it for about 20 to 30 minutes tops, and then I'll let it sit and rest for a while. My particular motor does get warm, almost to the point where it's a little too warm to touch with the bare hand. So I feel like this was the biggest drawback to this machine, was the motor. It has such cool features, though, that it's very enticing for the person just getting into it. And the reason is because it's like a little miniature 2x72. It has a belt system and a pulley arm, much like the 2x72s. And it comes with a flat platen. We'll get into the flat platen here in a second. We'll go over some of the things, but it's very appealing because it's similar to a 2x72. And one of the other cool things that you don't get with other 2x42s on the market is that it goes horizontal. I feel like that is a major plus, and especially now that I've had the chance to use it both in vertical and horizontal, I would never want to go back to just having a vertical belt. There are so many different applications that you can use in the horizontal position that makes life much easier. So that's pretty much the major con of this grinder. Some of the pros would be that it was pretty available at the time, and I'm pretty sure it still is. And the price, it's really hard to beat the price. In fact, there's no other 2x42 or better on the market today that I've found around the same price that gives you the same amount of features. So to me, this is still something that even after a year, I think it owns that little niche in the market. There's just not really a whole lot to compare it to. One of the other selling points to this machine, at least for me, not only could it go horizontal, which was very appealing at the time, but the other main reason is that it's variable speed. And that, to me, at the time, I was running the 1x30, which runs super fast, and that's it. That was very appealing to me, to get something that could run super fast, or you could turn it down and go slow. And I still feel like that's a really good selling point for this machine. Let's turn it on and I'll show you 1 year later what speeds it has. So that's the slowest speed. That's at a 3 is what the digital readout says. And you can see it runs pretty slow. That speed is super great for sharpening or running maybe higher grit belts where you don't want to build up a lot of heat, or potentially putting an edge on your blade when you don't want to add a lot of heat. There's other reasons why you'd want to run it slow. And now that I've had a machine that goes fast and slow, I would not want to be stuck with one that just has one speed. So that was a big selling point for this grinder when I got it. And I still have it, and I have not spent the money on another one because it still works. And for what I do, it does a pretty good job. So yeah, I would say the price and the horizontal position, the variable speed drive, those were the main selling points. Now, let's talk about some of the cons other than the motor. Number one, when you first get this machine, there's quite a bit of tweaking that you have to do in order to get it up to par, let's say, to be suitable to actually grind in bevels and that sort of thing. One of the very first things I did was I took the guards off. That's a dusty little guard there, isn't it? Phew. My bad. One of the first things I did was I took the guards off, and these to me just got in the way of making quick belt changes. There was a couple up top on the front wheel, one on the back wheel, and they were just kind of annoying to me, so I cut those off. Now that's not necessary to do, but it's something that I think you should do if you own this machine and haven't done it. It just makes it easier to switch belts. That really isn't that big of a deal. Let's talk about, I feel like, besides the motor, the number two thing, or the number two reason that this thing, you could call it a... The second reason why you might call this thing a stinker out of the box is the flat platen. This thing came with a very thin, cheesy, thin piece of metal, and it just isn't really suitable long-term, even for a hobby knife maker, long-term use. It just didn't cut the mustard, so to speak. The other problem with the flat platen is that it was wider than the belt. And the tracking on here is okay. You can get the belt to move a little bit, but the problem was the way that it came in the box is you couldn't get the belt to move out past the flat platen that it came with. So as we take this belt off here, you can see I still have my little graphite coated sticker on here. And, a lot of people made fun of these things. And are they crap? Well, yeah, it's kind of crappy, but it does serve a purpose still, at least for me. Number one, it does keep heat off of the platen, but it also, when you need it, has a little bit more of a smooth texture behind the belt, and that can be good for some things. So it's something that I've tried to hold on to and use when needed. Here we are looking at the flat platen. Now, there used to be more of this green stuff that kind of came out, this thin metal here. It came out and stuck out unnecessarily over here. So as you're trying to get your blade up here and grinding in bevels, I found that the stuff was just in the way. So I got rid of that. I actually cut the back of the platen to be thinner here, and then I drilled and tapped holes in this big piece of plate steel. And that, to me, it made it more rigid, and it just gave it the right width to run a belt over one side or the other. And there's a couple of other things I had to do to get it to work properly. I had to put a couple of spacers or washers here to get this just out the right way. I would imagine that every machine's going to be a little different, so there's not a step-by-step perfect amount of washers to do. You just kind of have to mess with it, but there you can kind of see the modification that I did. It's just mild steel, but it's holding up really well. I don't really have a whole lot of grooves or cuts in the plate steel, so I can imagine this will be lasting me a while longer. Yeah, that was pretty much the second upgrade that I did. After taking the covers off the wheels, I pretty much worked on the platen. And that's really going to be a must-do if you're still considering buying this machine 1 year later. Unless they've fixed it. I don't know. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But when they first came out a year ago, that's definitely something that you have to watch for, because it's really hard to grind good bevels and get good plunge lines without the belt being able to hang right on the edge or a little over. So that's something to note. Now let's look at a couple of other things that I've done in the past year to give this grinder a little bit more versatility. So one of the very first attachments that I wanted to try outside of the flat platen was a contact wheel. And I did like a homemade version of a 6-inch wheel, and that worked pretty good. And after a while, I got rid of that and hopped onto Amazon, got an 8-inch contact wheel, and then pretty much just kind of rigged up my own version of the tooling arm, which is just some plate steel, and then threaded a bolt and put a couple of homemade spacers and welded a nut. Just kind of a, thrown together sort of thing. But now that I've done that, I do have a working contact wheel. And what's cool about this is not only is it still tight enough to run your 2x42-inch belts, but now you can also utilize the 2x48-inch belts with this. You can also do that with the flat platen. You just have to pull the platen out pretty far. And to me, it's just a little bit more unstable than a 2x42. But they do work if you're able to find those belts a little easier or for a better price. So here you can see we've got it hooked up, and this thing runs pretty decent for the most part. If you get up to super high speeds, it gets a little unstable, but it does work for what I use it for. Let's turn it on and check it out. So there you can see at a pretty low speed, and it's tracking pretty good. Let's turn it up some. And with doing the knob here, you can see the belt going over this way, getting the belt to hang off the edge a little bit, and moving it back the other way. So it does work pretty good. Is it a professional 2x72 type of setup? No, absolutely not. But you can do hollow grinding with this, and you can also use the radius of the wheel for certain types of grinds or profiles for blades. And so that is a super handy attachment to have or make for this machine. All right, so now that we've covered the flat platen, we've done the contact wheel, let's talk about the next item, which you can get for this, and that is a small wheel attachment. I purchased mine off of eBay for a pretty good price. I think I paid $38 for this thing. And of course it didn't come like this. This is one that probably one of the cheaper ones you can find online. Really the only modifications that I did to this was to trim this piece out to make it narrow enough to stick in the tooling arm, and then got rid of a support arm that used to be here. But you can see with those couple of quick modifications that you can insert this into the tooling arm or into the tool rest spot, really either one, and you can get it to work pretty decent. Let's throw a belt on there and we'll check it out. So a lot like the contact wheel, you can see this thing tracks and runs pretty good. And what's cool about the small wheel attachment, at least the one I got, it has different size wheels, and that's really come in handy for some of the different things that I've done. I think mine goes from a 1/2 inch up to an inch. So that is definitely a plus, and it's not something you're going to find in another $300 belt grinder, at least that I have found so far. Now, something else I haven't talked about yet is the tool rest. The tool rest that it comes with is incredibly small, and in fact, you can see on the back side here, here's the tooling arm, and then it's just this metal plate. So it doesn't give you a whole lot of room to actually put your workpiece up to a running belt. So what I've done here is I've just super glued another piece, this second one, onto it, and that's pretty much my permanent work rest. And then if we zoom out even more, you can see a third piece added on, and this is for doing longer things like, I don't know, swords or really long handles. I've used this for doing one of the Tonto and Scabbard that I did. It was really nice to have this entire work rest to run the whole thing across and know that you're still holding the right angle. The last blade that I did, you can see the handle here, and it has just a lot of different lines or facets in it, and that was created just by using this exact angle, holding up the handle to the running belt like so. So it's definitely handy to upgrade the tool rest, and you know, you can pretty much kind of custom make one with whatever you have laying around. Well, so there you go. There's a quick review of the Grizzly 2x42 knife grinder 1 year later. It's still rocking and rolling for me. Hopefully, if you have bought this machine, it hasn't crapped out on you, because that would stink. Perhaps I got lucky and I got one that's somewhat decent. Like I said in the beginning, I really try my best to just run this thing as much as I need it, to not run it at such a high speed for a long amount of time. I think that has helped. And is it the best knife grinder? No, absolutely not. Is it decent for someone who's starting? Yes, I would still recommend this grinder to people wanting to get into the hobby. Even with the few issues that it does have, it's still easily fixed. Most of the problems that it has straight out of the box, minus the motor, can be fixed. So that's pretty much the long and the short of this grinder. Hopefully you guys found some good information in this video. Let me know in the comments below if I forgot to talk about something, or more importantly, if you have a question about something. Maybe there's people out there still considering buying this thing. To the best of my knowledge, I will help you guys out if you have any questions. I also know that, at least as of today, I am currently always on the lookout for knife making gear. I don't know of another grinder on the market for the money that offers all the features that this one does. They're not the best features, and there's a lot of tweaking that you have to do with certain things to get it usable, but I still would recommend using this grinder. I've been able to make quite a few blades on it, and I'll show you a few. Here's a dagger that I made out of a metal file, and everything from the handle to the profile to the bevels were ground in on this grinder. This is a pretty big, thick file. It's like a 1/4 inch thick file. I actually did these on the small wheel attachment. So I'm trying to utilize different attachments for different parts of knives. Here's another little file that I made on this grinder. Pretty uniform bevels for the most part. I'm not an expert, but you know, for someone just starting out in the hobby, it's definitely usable. Let's see, I got a couple more down here. We made the Viking sacks with the hamon for the Viking challenge. I did this blade on this grinder. This blade was a lot of fun. This was forged out of 1080 and has a cactus wood handle and epoxy, and it's got the hamon on here. I actually used lemon juice to bring that out. That was really a fun build. Probably one of my all-time favorites, at least so far. If not the dagger, then it would have been the wrench sword or the wrench saber. I forged this out of an old Williams wrench and profiled it and ground in the bevels on the Grizzly 2x42. This was a ton of fun to build, and it's something that I'm having a hard time letting go of. I've thought about trying to sell it, but it's just a cool blade, and it's probably one I'll hold on to, at least for a while. It's a lot of fun to chop branches and whatnot in the backyard. There you have it. Hopefully that sums up a 1-year review for the Grizzly 2x42. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and like I said, feel free to ask any questions if I didn't cover something. Hope you guys are having a great weekend, and look forward to seeing you soon in another build here at Frenchie's Forge. See you guys later.